What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Fantasy Lab DFS NBA live stream. I'm John Pemba. Alongside with me, as always, James Grande. James, just a small little four-game slate today. Nothing too crazy. I would say a GPP only slate. We have four game totals, all pretty high here. But Denver and versus the Lakers, 234.5, definitely the one we're looking at most.
Yeah, and it's weird though because it started at 2:39 when we first recorded our podcast last night, and it's down, 4.5 points, 5.5 points. So I think that's something that we need to kind of, think about why. And I think it's probably because the Lakers aren't a back-to-back.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with you there. I think that we saw James finally get the win last night, right? Finally, right. We didn't think that he was gonna lose to Phoenix, and they didn't. They got that win, and he was on pace for a huge night, if not for the blowout. So, I guess it'll be interesting to see sort of where we go from there. But on this four-game slate, why don't we just dive in? Start off at point guard. Russell Westbrook, top point guard option on the slate, gets the Celtics. Thoughts on him? Thoughts on the point guard position overall?
So I like Westbrook. I'm not building my lineups around him tonight. I think it does concern me a bit that Boston's the number one defensive efficient team in the NBA. So I think obviously we can use Westbrook against anyone, and he doesn't need to necessarily be efficient to put up monster games. He could score 30 points on 35 shots and still get us a triple-double if he wants to. I mean, we've seen that plenty of times. We're also never going to see his price tag this low, at least on DraftKings, 10.5K. So I think that's something to consider. But I don't think we need to force him into our lineups tonight. I'm not using him in cash games. I think there are better high price options. And I think he's fine for tournaments, but I'd rather just go down to other point guards, aka Damian Lillard and Kyrie Irving for just the price, the savings. If you want to get LeBron, you're not going to be able to play Westbrook. If you want to get Jokic and LeBron in a game stack, you obviously can't get Westbrook. Irving kind of affords you can do that with Kyrie because he's so cheap, and I think this is the spot we take advantage of Kyrie. He finally shot the ball fairly well last game. I'm not going to say he shot the lights out of the ball, out of it, but he did look decent. We've seen this total rise from 211 to 217 since the start of last night until right now. I think that is really, really nice. We should see a few more possessions here for Kyrie, and I really like the price tag. And I don't think you go wrong with Lillard. Very safe floor, very good for all formats.
Yeah, I really like Lillard in this matchup against Orlando. On the podcast, you and I discussed Irving, and I was still a little iffy on him just because, we don't know what Celtics player is really going to be the one that steps up. It's going to be him or Tatum. It seems like as long as Gordon Hayward's still on that minutes limit. But yeah, maybe this is just a matchup where Irving really has the ability to thrive. You're right. The price tag on him is way too low. Only needs 35 fantasy points to hit value. So yeah, I'm not going to argue with that there. Another point guard that I was really in on the podcast that we discussed this morning, Reggie Jackson. I still think he's in play today. Pretty safe floor, about 30 fantasy points. Gets Cleveland, who I think is a good matchup today. What's your thoughts on Jackson?
Yeah, I think both him and Ish Smith are kind of the two spend down-ish players. I know Jackson's more mid-tier than Ish Smith, who's obviously a value play. But, I mean, if you want to play Jackson, that's fine. He's scoring 20 points a game. I'm not going to tell you not to. But if you want to get the savings off of Jackson, I think so actually, from an ownership standpoint, which is something you really need to consider on a four-game slate, Jackson is probably the play because everyone is going to go down and spend or not spend on Ish Smith because he's so cheap. So if you want to be contrarian, I think the approach is go Jackson. If you want to be chalky, so I think you can play cash games tonight. I think there is a lot of value and there's a lot of top options. So I think you can play cash. I think Ish is probably the cash game play. And I think Jackson would be the tournament flyer.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder, especially here with Kevin Love already ruled out, and we saw the Cavs lose to the Nets last night, how competitive this game can even be if that ends up being the case. Does Ish end up playing more minutes because it's a blow? Now, he already has a pretty secure role off the bench. but maybe that's something we really should consider here in this matchup. Again, Cleveland's on the road without probably, I guess you can argue, their best player.
Oh, yeah.
It doesn't seem likely that this game's going to stay close. There's a 9.5 point spread here. So maybe you look to some of the guys in Detroit's bench and think maybe they get a bump up in minutes, production in the second half, and you can definitely get your value there.
Langston Galloway. How about that?
Yeah.
If we're gonna talk about, if we're gonna talk about a blowout, I think it's a thing. Like they got blown out against Brooklyn just a night ago with Kevin Love in the lineup.
Yeah.
Galloway on the year when they've been healthy, and he's still seen 33, 26, 25 minutes. So I'm not saying there's a huge usage rate, but we have seen that he can shoot, and that's something that he will do. So I think if you're going to play the blowout card, I think he's the primary beneficiary to that.
And I think that plays well on FanDuel, where you can use the punt play option.
Right.
Take the min price guy, put him in your lineup, and if he doesn't go off, well, you don't kind of score anyways because they get rid of the lowest score. If this game does go into a blowout and he does produce, well, now you're getting a 3,500 player that could potentially outscore, some of your higher mid-tier starters just because of the matchup and opportunity that they're getting. Any other point guards catching your fancy on the slate?
I think DJ Augustine's in play, but it's not moving the needle for me.
That's fine. What do you think about Lonzo Ball tonight?
So I think that game is generally just in play.
Because I'm not going to.
Yeah, because of the point spread. And we saw a lot last night from Lonzo. And I've been kind of saying that we don't know how he's going to mesh with LeBron. Last night kind of showed me and everyone who was on the same side of the fence with me that didn't believe that they can mesh. I mean, they were connecting a lot of the night, fast breaks. I saw LeBron threw a pass over Isaiah Cannon for a post-up to Lonzo and got him 2 points. I mean, he hit him on a wing for a 3. Yep. So they can mesh. So, yeah, he's fine. 6.4K, the price is rising. That's my one downfall. And if Lonzo's going well, how much Gary Harris defense does he see? Because they easily could just switch Gary Harris onto him. And I think that is concerning because Gary Harris is a very, very good perimeter defender.
Yeah, I mean, I think, Hart would probably be a better matchup for Harris. We've seen Hart play really well. Last night, not so much. It took a strong sort of second half for him to somewhat get value with his 25 fantasy points. But let's move on to shooting guard because you brought up a player to me with the injury to Kevin Love that has a pretty good usage rate with Love off the floor and a guy that I love playing whenever he gets the minutes, and that's Jordan Clarkson.
Yeah, I mean, look, people immediately look to when you consider when someone goes down, everyone I feel like thinks about, all right, who's his replacement? But I think we should think larger scale and where that production goes throughout the rest of the team. That's how you find the diamonds in the rough. Clarkson, to me, is that guy tonight. 34.3% usage rate with Kevin Love off the floor, and he's averaging over a fantasy point per minute. I mean, he's been limited to, the low 20s this year.
Yeah.
Right. But he's still scoring double figures every game he's played. And with Kevin Love off the floor, there's no reason that the 14 to 12 to 14 to 15 shots don't go up to 17, 18. And if a few of them fall, we're looking at 20 actual points, maybe. Especially if this game can stay close. I think he's the primary, not the primary reason, but one of the primary reasons why.
Yeah, I mean, again, this is a guy I've loved back to his Laker days. Whenever he would get on the floor, his usage rate was crazy. It was last year he had like a top 7 usage rate for a while or something.
Yeah, for pretty much the whole year. I think until he was traded to Cleveland, it was like top 7.
And then the Lakers just like wouldn't play him. Obviously Gary Harris is your probably top shooting guard. I think you had him in your starting 5 video. We talked about him on the podcast. What is it about Gary Harris in this matchup? Aside from the point spread, obviously, I think that's just a given. Is it just the lack of maybe depth, we'll say, at the shooting guard? I mean, $6,500 is a top price shooting guard on DraftKings tonight. Or do you find this maybe to be a spend down spot and you spend up elsewhere?
So I think Harris is a lock for cash games. He was the first one I put in my cash game lineups on both sites. Because he's improved every year. He contributes across the board, and the scoring is where he's really giving us a boost this year. 18 plus points in every game this year. We are also getting a Lakers team playing at the second fastest pace in the NBA. So, pace equals more possessions and more opportunity for the opposing team. So since the Lakers are playing at such a high pace, obviously that's a primary reason as to why this total is so high. But it's just going to present Harris the opportunity. And in all sports, all fantasy sports, not just basketball, opportunity is what we need for people that we're going to roster in season long or daily. And this is just one of those opportunities. And like you said, Will Barton out just gives him so many more shots on the offensive end. They're going to, Jokic isn't always a score first guy. Sometimes he's a pass guy. Jamal Murray's been kind of banged up, and only played in the teens last time he was out. So this offense could really run through Gary Harris tonight in an up-tempo, high-scoring game. I don't see a reason that you fade him in cash, and if you want to lock him into tournaments, I love him there too.
Yep. In a rarity, we have a single position player, a small forward on DraftKings, a guy I've talked about a lot, Seti Osman. Again, no Kevin Love. We saw him produce, the start of the year, back-to-back 40 fantasy point outings. Didn't only play 24 minutes in the blowout loss to Brooklyn last night, but this could be a matchup for him with no Love on the floor where he can be, maybe the primary scorer, maybe the go-to player, assuming he plays all the minutes like he had been until last night. What do you think of Osman? Only $5,900 on FanDuel. I know we were just talking about shooting guards, but he's there for me.
Yeah, I mean, he's going to be the primary scorer, at least on the first unit. Like we just kind of were touting Jordan Clarkson being the primary scorer on the second unit. I think Osman's in a really good spot. I'm really happy to see his price at least on DraftKings, where it is. I still think it's a little pricey on FanDuel, but if you go through the FanDuel options at small forward, if you're not playing LeBron or Paul George, like if you're only playing one of them, the only real other cash game play would be Seti Osman, maybe Larry Nance, because the Channing Frye may be starting, but he's more of a filler to me than anything.
I can't believe he's doing anything.
Listen, man, we've seen Vince Carter and Jared Dudley start consistently this year, so this is just to chalk another one up. Another player that has been in the NBA for seemingly 100 years and somehow starting in 2018. But they're all fillers. They're all they're all not productive players in this league. They're just filling in. That's why I think Osman and Nance on FanDuel, especially same team, are probably the only two cash viable options. But I know, you just mentioned you're going to buy one of these other small forward options jerseys coming up soon in Jonathan Isaac. Why don't you give us a little tout on him, huh?
Yeah, well, I mean, it was purely just because I watched him play the Celtics the other day. And usually when you get to see a player up front, you see sort of the talent. You get to see how they move on the floor. If they're involved in the offense, if they're not involved in the offense, if maybe they're scoring by chance, long rebounds, given possessions and whatnot. But Isaac, to me, was very impressive. He's super long, he's tall, he rebounds, he's athletic, he can shoot from the outside. He's a mismatch problem for pretty much probably any small forward in the league, aside from a Durant or a Giannis in terms of height. So, yeah, I'm just a big fan of his tonight. He gets Portland, so what? He's going to be matched up with an Evan Turner, I guess. Not really that great defensively, not very tall in terms of size mismatch. So, yeah, I'm on Jonathan Isaac. Let's talk about one more shooting guard because you mentioned him in your starting five as well, and also small forward eligibility, so he kind of plays in here. But Evan Fournier is a guy that you were high on.
Yeah, I think he's viable for all formats. The price tag is really nice across the board for 5.6K, 6.3K. He gets CJ McCollum defense, and that's a primary. Portland has a really good defense as a unit, but if there's one individual that we want to attack, it's CJ McCollum. He worries about his offense a little too much compared to his defense. 109 defensive rating last year, are already up to 114 this year. So Fournier shouldn't have a problem. As long as he gets the minutes, we're seeing the usage. We're seeing 39 plus fantasy points per game. If he sees the minutes. If this game can stay close, it's in Orlando. There's no reason it shouldn't at least be competitive. I don't see Fournier flopping like he did the first two games.
Yeah.
Also, one. I just want to throw. I'll say the name and I won't say anything else. Lance Stevenson. Okay, let's go to small forward.
Lance Stevenson, interesting.
Listen,
Nick Stauskas, another cheap little guy that we can throw out there. I know you've been a little iffy on him, but 2 games now where he's gone off shooting, and the one game where he didn't produce is because he had a bad shooting night. So GPP only option, obviously, but I mean, this is a guy that's $4,300 on FanDuel who has now twice gone over 30 fantasy points. Again, you talk about sort of that punt play over on FanDuel where if he ends up going for 11, then he doesn't count towards your team. If he goes for 30, you're getting 8x value out of him. So I think he's a guy, again, he's small forward and shooting guard eligible on DraftKings, so you get him there. Only shooting guard eligible on FanDuel. At the top of small forward, it's LeBron James. Again, James and I always say we're never going to not tell you to play these guys. LeBron is the highest priced player on this small slate. So if you're going to pay up for him, you're going to need to find the value. I almost feel like I'd rather save some money and go to Paul George and try to build sort of a Jokic George maybe combo because you get to save some money on the LeBron train there. How are you handling LeBron on this slate?
So I don't think that you shouldn't play him, but I think there are better options based on price. I think the matchup is great. The pace is great. We mentioned the total is great. But do we need to do it on this slate? I don't know. Again, it's hard to – there are a lot of really good, like you said, Jokic. There's Blake Griffin we haven't talked about. There's Damian Lillard. To fit like multiple – like 2 or 3 of these guys in a cash game, you can't fit LeBron. So I think LeBron, to me, is an excellent tournament play, but I'd rather build a fair and balanced cash lineup because you just mentioned Paul George. I mean, if we get 3 of these 8,000 to 9,000 players, I think we're at more of an advantage than getting LeBron at 10K and then kind of doing a bunch of, mid-tier to low, because there's a lot of value. There's not the mid-tier. I think we're kind of there's a lot of high price, really good players and a lot of low tier, really good players. With the mid tier is where we're lacking because it's such a small slate. So I think James in tournaments is fine. I'm just not going to go there in cash games.
That's fine. You mentioned Larry Nance Jr. On FanDuel, he's listed as a small forward.
Right.
DraftKings, he's a power forward and a center. You and I talked about him a little bit before it was yesterday's game, I think it was, because he played against Atlanta, made his debut, 17 minutes, 9-4-4, wasn't terrible for his price tag. Goes and plays 20 minutes against Brooklyn, 4-6-4 with 2 steals for 21 fantasy points, hitting you value there. Again, tonight you talk about no Kevin Love. We know that Nance, when he gets minutes, and hopefully he will, he's an energy player. He can grab rebounds. He can score. He can get you the steals and occasionally.
He's a good passer. He's a good passer too.
Yeah,
really
four assists in both of these games. So I think again he's a nice cheap option, cheaper on DraftKings where he's only $4,800 on small forward. But on FanDuel, if you're not paying up for LeBron or George, it's probably safer to just find the value, maybe even punt a small forward position and go with other guys in other positions paying up for. So any other small forwards appealing to you?
So I said it to you. I'm just, again, this is a guy because it's a 4-game slate. I think there are 100 different routes you could take, and I think on FanDuel specifically, one of those routes is to punt the one of the positions. And I think small forward is probably the position you want to, because look, like I said earlier, if you don't play LeBron and Paul George combined, and you don't want to spend 6.9K on Cedi Osman, which I understand, you can just full punt, and my full punt option for today is none other than where is he and why is he not small forward eligible? No, Sam Dekker.
Yeah, I was gonna say he's small. He's just so low priced that you have to really scroll down the list to find him. Mint price over on FanDuel, Dekker on DraftKings, I assume just $100 higher than mint price over there. Now, I'll be honest with you, I like Sam Dekker. He was a guy that I kind of hoped would eventually sort of start getting more shots. I thought when he got traded last year that was going to open up opportunity for him. That didn't end up being the case. He started with Houston, right? And he would come off the bench for Houston and hit shots, and then he went to the Clippers. I'm like, Decker's going to be in LA and he's going to be able to score and start. And then they got Gallinari. They just never really gave him the opportunity.
Right.
So so maybe this is an opportunity for him. Again, you talk about FanDuel punt plays, sure. If they're going to get him going, if they're going to give him 25 minutes, he can shoot shots from the outside. There's definitely a chance for him to hit value.
Yeah, I just look at it like if they're worried about Larry Nance at all because he'd returned from injury and this is the first back-to-back, and maybe that's why he's not starting, and we just haven't heard anything yet about it. I don't see particularly any updates on it yet.
Anything, yeah.
So if that's the case, they need a backup 4 or backup 3, and Decker just kind of fits that bill. Plus, you mentioned it could be a blowout, so he's going to get run in the fourth quarter in a blowout too. So just as a one of the FanDuel, I don't think I'd play him on DraftKings, but because FanDuel throws away the position or throws away a position, I think it's viable. What
about your boy Hernangomez there in Denver?
Yeah, I think he's fine. I think I like him more than Torrey Craig because Torrey Craig has a sub 10% usage rate, and yes, you heard me correct, sub 10%. So I think he's fine, but I'm not like I was really into him last, and we got lucky. He got us like 6x because the blowout. I don't think this is going to be a blowout. He's fine. I think he's going to go overlooked. He's going to be sub 10%. So if you want to do it, if he hit a couple more shots, he gives us 7-8x last time out. So
moving on to power forward, obviously you and I both like Jokic tonight, the Joker.
So mad he's power forward. I'm just never going to not say that.
Power forward on FanDuel. Was he still center eligible just on DraftKings, right?
Where he actually plays every second of his floor time.
Well, that's what it is. So on FanDuel, though, you have to decide between Blake Griffin and him. How do you go about choosing? Do you think Blake, needs Drummond to be out of the lineup for him to go, for 80? Or do you think that he can, in this matchup, even with the blowout there, he can still get you 45, 50 fantasy points to get you that 5x?
So, I mean, with Drummond, we saw Blake get 60.
Yep.
So, even if he didn't go for 80, it's kind of like we were talking about Steph Curry yesterday on live stream, and this is kind of what I put in the playbook. Yeah. When guys like Steph and Blake are just riding this hot streak, it's really hard to just avoid them. Whether or not it's a blowout, whether, we got 60-plus fantasy points from Steph Curry in 3 quarters. I wouldn't say that is completely out of possibility for Blake if he continues. Now, I don't think he's going to score 50 points again, obviously, but I don't think 30 and 10 is out of the question in a smash spot against who? Channing Frye to start the game? Or Tristan Thompson? Or even Larry Nance, who, yes, is more athletic, but he's not the best defender. So, I'm not going to avoid Blake because the blowout. And if this game stays close, maybe because people think it's going to be a blowout, his ownership is depressed. I think he's an elite play, and it's hard to decide between them. So maybe in a tournament, especially on FanDuel, you just play both of them.
Totally fair. I am probably going to consider going back to Jason Tatum tonight. Right. You think about the matchup; it's either going to be Grant or Patterson to start the game. Probably a power forward, you would think, right? That's how it's sort of been all year. Tatum should have the advantage there. I know he let everybody down against Orlando, but the Celtics in general let everybody down. And while letting everybody down, he still grabbed 10 rebounds. Second straight game with 10-plus rebounds. I don't believe he's going to go through a scoring drought all of a sudden. So $6,700 over on FanDuel. On DraftKings, Tatum is $6,600. Really good matchup here. And then if you look at the defense versus position rank, OKC is giving up the 4th most fantasy points, or 3rd most fantasy points to the opposing power forward position. So this is just a really, really strong matchup here for Tatum and Boston in general. This should be a competitive game for both. I think the guys that score points on these two teams will score their points and really be maybe the safest game of the entire slate.
Yeah, and he's gonna in the start of this game he should abuse Patrick Patterson. I don't think we see Patterson for too long. I think Jeremy Grant ultimately plays. He's gonna probably mirror Tatum's minutes essentially because Pat for as he's a good pro. He's a good filler, but again, another guy who just fills the void kind of. So he's going to abuse him early on, and I think that kind of gets him into a rhythm regardless of who guards him the rest of the night. So yeah, I like Tatum a lot.
Okay, yeah. Any other power forwards you're looking at?
I mean, I just mentioned Jeremy Grant. I think he's viable all formats. He's so cheap on DraftKings, 3.8K. He allows you to do a lot of things with your lineup. I think he's also viable on FanDuel. He's playing 27 plus minutes, and like I just said, I think he mirrors Tatum tonight. I think Paul Millsap goes really overlooked. I think a lot of Denver. I should have mentioned Jamal Murray too. Complete GPP dart. Jamal Murray could fill it up. Paul Millsap, I mean, he hasn't been good shooting the ball at all, and he still put up 25 FanDuel points in every game or more. And he's so cheap across the board. This is someone that we're used to seeing in the 8K. So I think Millsap.
And on such a small slate, you don't need every play to go for like 40 plus like you do.
5x.
These larger slates. Yeah. Just got to get that 5 to 6x for sure. One other guy I mentioned last night, and I don't know if you agreed with me or not, you're a little lukewarm on him. But I talked about it just because he got some interesting minutes there is Jonathan Williams. Again, total punt play, but 20 minutes against Phoenix, put up 14 fantasy points. 13 minutes against San Antonio, 23 fantasy points. If blowouts happen, he seems to be getting some minutes there. Their rotation in the front court shrinking due to injuries. So, again, I think Williams for the Lakers could be interesting punt. And Zach Collins, another guy as well. And actually, Zach Collins and Marcus Morris are both priced the same on FanDuel. And Morris, I think, is another guy that's in a good spot coming off the Boston bench. With Aaron Baines already ruled out, they could rely on that front court to be a little bit smaller, needing Al Horford to match up against Steven Adams at the center spot, which is a great transition to talk about tonight's center. So, James, where are we going there?
I mean, Nikola Jokic, but apparently he's a power forward. Just some there.
I don't make the rules.
I know. Tristan Thompson, I mentioned him yesterday, and I mentioned him today on the starting five video, and this was before we knew Kevin Love was going to be out. I think Thompson's going to command all the rebounds. So even if it's a blowout, and let's say he gets 25 to 28 minutes, I think there's 15 rebound upside here. Yep. And the shot attempts have been encouraging. I'm not saying he's an offensive stud by any means. He's subpar offensively. He starts
earning that contract,
Right. It is time. It is time he starts earning the contract. And again, I mean, they had to pick up the shot attempts with LeBron gone. Now Kevin Love's out tonight. I mean, there's no reason he doesn't take another 10 shots tonight. And if he just makes half of them and we get another double-double, 4.8K, I think that's very viable. He's going to be in the paint all game with Andre Drummond. So I think he's in a good spot here.
Yep. Interesting matchup here with Portland and Orlando. You have Vucevic versus Nurkic. I know you like Nurkic last season. Vucevic averaged 18 and 12 against Portland. Nurkic limited minutes, 2 games, 28 minutes, averaged 10 and 9.5. So averaged himself almost a double-double there. Obviously, Vucevic, the more offensively talented player. Who of the two do you prefer?
I like Nurkic a little more tonight, but again, the minutes are just so unsettling. I think Vucevic provides us with the safer floor, and Nurkic not even that he provides us with more upside, but I think Nurkic is the better defender of the two. So if they were both to play 30 minutes, I think Vucevic would struggle more with Nurkic defensively than Nurkic would with Vucevic.
That's fair. How much JaVale McGee exposure do you have tonight?
Not a lot, but that's not because I don't like him. I've actually really, throughout the day, grown fond of Al Horford despite the tough matchup. I mean, just Aaron Baines is out. He's going to play all the minutes. I mean, if Adams is on the floor, it's not like Boston is going to switch Tatum down to the 5, and I know they have Daniel Tice who can play center, but I mean, Daniel Tice is also coming off a major injury, so how many minutes are we going to see him on the floor? So I think Horford is pretty safe across the board, and I think we should get him at a really low ownership.
Yeah, I mean, I always like Al Horford. He does a little bit of everything enough that really make him a safe cash games play. Again, even when Boston struggled the other night against Orlando, 15-6-4, 8-10-3. Yeah, that was a blow, or was a blow for a while against the Knicks. Only played 23 minutes in that game. Toronto 14-10-9. So He's a guy that can fill up the stat sheet. Doesn't need to go for 20 real points to hit value. $6,600 on FanDuel. Over on DraftKings, they got him at what? $66,000. So yeah, 5x is 30 points for him. 33 points. That's super doable. Even though I know the matchup against Steve Adams is certainly a tough one. That being said, I also love Adams. You should get a ton of rebounds tonight against the Celtics because aside from really Jason Tatum, and no one's really crashing the glass in Boston. They're a perimeter shooting team. I think there'll be plenty of rebounds for Adams tonight for him to grab. If you're looking at something to go up against, look at his last game against Sacramento. 10 points, 14 rebounds. Probably be somewhere in that range. Maybe it could give or take a few more points, but I'm kind of a fan of his. Also in that mid 6K price range. Any value centers on your watch tonight, or
I mean, Tristan Thompson is the guy.
Yeah.
I mean, you could play if you go to DraftKings, you could play Larry Nance at center. But other than that,
$3,000 on FanDuel.
I don't.
On DraftKings, rather.
Yeah, it's just he's played. You know how many minutes he's played, John, this year? The same amount of minutes that you and I have played in the NBA.
It means he's rested. He's ready to go. Yeah, I agree with you. If this ends up being a Channing Friday, then we're in for a
chalk it up.
We're in for a long season.
And I'll chalk it up, and I will send Channing Frye a nicely worded mail, a piece of mail, because that's what people do in 2018. They send mail. So sure. I will send him mail, and I will say congrats on winning the 0.1% of people that played you a lot of money.
Oh, he'll get more owned than that on a 4-game slate.
I know. But it's just not the I just don't see like.
I hear you.
Yeah,
I hear you. All right, it is 6:30, so that's gonna wrap up tonight's Fantasy Alarm DFS NBA live stream. But don't worry, James and I will be in the subscriber chat, taking you guys up the roster lock, helping you out with your lineups, any late breaking news in terms of injury on the small slate, because if a big name ends up being rested, because we're 4 games into the year, so we already have to start resting guys. That's going to shift things dramatically if some more value opens up. So be on the lookout for that. Feel free to ask us our questions in subscriber chat. We're here to help you guys out. Good luck, everybody, tonight, and we'll hit you up tomorrow.
Later, guys.